The Watcher in the Woods. It started as a typical Friday evening for Emily and her younger brother Ethan. Their parents had left for a weekend getaway, leaving the two siblings alone in their quiet suburban home. Emily, 17, enjoyed the solitude, while 13-year-old Ethan immersed himself in video games upstairs. The backyard woods stretched endlessly beyond their property, dense and silent as the sun dipped below the horizon. Emily closed the curtains and locked the doors as a precaution, but the unease gnawed at her, a feeling she couldn't explain. Around 9 p.m., while Emily prepared snacks in the kitchen, a faint knock echoed from the back door. Startled, she froze, her eyes darting toward the frosted glass. She flipped the porch light switch, but the bulb flickered before dying out. "Probably the wind," she whispered, though the knock had been deliberate. Minutes later, Ethan called out from his room, his voice panicked. "Emily, someone's outside my window." She bolted up the stairs, heart pounding. Ethan stood pale-faced, pointing at his bedroom window. She peered through the glass but saw only the black expanse of the woods. "No one's there," she said, trying to calm him. But Ethan shook his head violently. "He was there, Emily. He was staring at me." Emily reassured him it was his imagination and returned downstairs. But the unease lingered, and when she glanced at the living room window, her blood ran cold. Two muddy handprints smudged the outside glass, right at eye level. She immediately called the police, who arrived within minutes. Officers searched the perimeter but found no signs of anyone. They assured Emily it was likely a prank before leaving. That night, the siblings decided to sleep in the living room together. At 3 a.m., a metallic scraping sound woke Emily. The front door handle jiggled violently, followed by heavy footsteps on the porch. Emily held her breath, clutching Ethan close. Through the small gap in the curtains, she glimpsed a tall figure standing motionless in the yard. It was a man, his face obscured by shadows, but his posture was unnatural, almost animalistic. The man raised a hand and pointed directly at the window. Emily's scream jolted Ethan awake. She grabbed her phone to call the police again, but the man vanished before the line connected. This time, the officers found a trail of large footprints leading from the woods to their house, and back again. The police stationed a patrol car nearby for the rest of the night, but the siblings didn't sleep. The next morning, Emily found a single note taped to the back door. Written in smudged, childlike handwriting were the words, "I like watching you. The forgotten trail." Aaron had been an avid hiker for years, always seeking new trails in the remote corners of Appalachia. One crisp October morning, he decided to explore a little-known path he'd stumbled upon in an old map book. A trail marked simply as the Hollow. The entrance was unassuming, marked by an arch of gnarled trees that looked like clasped hands. Aaron felt a strange chill as he stepped through, but he brushed it off as the cool autumn air. The trail was overgrown and twisted, as if it had been forgotten for decades. Hours passed, and Aaron became increasingly aware of the unnatural silence. No birds chirped, no leaves rustled. Even the crunch of his boots on the forest floor seemed muted. He checked his map again, but the trail he followed didn't align with any of the marked paths. As he paused to recalibrate, he noticed something unusual. A small clearing ahead, filled with wooden totems. They were crude carvings of human faces, each distorted in agony. Some were missing eyes, others had gaping mouths as if screaming. Aaron hesitated but stepped closer, his curiosity outweighing his fear. The totems encircled a shallow pit filled with broken bones. They weren't animal bones. Aaron could tell from the unmistakable shape of a human skull. His stomach churned as he backed away, intending to turn around and leave. But the trail behind him was gone. The trees now formed an impenetrable wall, as though the forest had shifted while he wasn't looking. Panic set in, and Aaron sprinted forward, hoping to find another way out. The trail became narrower, the air thicker, and the daylight dimmer. Soon, he came upon an old wooden cabin, barely standing amid the encroaching trees. A faint sound emanated from within, a low, guttural hum. Against his better judgment, Aaron approached the cabin and peeked through the broken window. Inside was a single chair, and seated on it was a figure cloaked in tattered rags. Its head was bowed, but as Aaron watched, the figure began to lift its face. What he saw was impossible to comprehend. The face wasn't human. It was a swirling void of shadows and flickering light, constantly changing form. The hum grew louder, filling Aaron's head until he staggered backward, clutching his ears. He turned to run but stopped dead in his tracks. The totems from the clearing now surrounded the cabin, their carved faces somehow watching him. The last thing Aaron heard was the hum turning into a deafening roar. When search parties went looking for him days later, they found his backpack near the trail's entrance but no sign of Aaron. Locals warned them not to venture further, speaking in hushed tones about the hollows and the hikers who never returned. The static. Mia lived in a quiet rural town where cell service was patchy, and the local radio station was the primary source of news and entertainment. On clear nights, she loved sitting in her living room, listening to soft jazz on the old radio she inherited from her grandfather. One evening, as a thunderstorm loomed on the horizon, the radio began to act up. The music cut in and out, replaced by bursts of static. Mia adjusted the dial, trying to find a clear frequency, when she heard something odd. A faint voice crackled through the static. Mia, her hands froze on the dial. She hadn't imagined it. Someone, or something, had just said her name. She chuckled nervously, convincing herself it was just a coincidence. Small-town radios pick up all sorts of interference, she muttered. But then it came again. Mia, help me. The voice was desperate, almost childlike, and seemed to echo from the depths of the static. She turned the radio off, her pulse quickening. Yet the voice persisted, faint and muffled, as if coming from the walls themselves. Mia grabbed her phone to call her friend Jason, but there was no signal. Frustrated, she looked outside. The storm had rolled in faster than expected, with lightning illuminating the fields in jagged bursts. Suddenly, the radio switched on by itself. The static roared through the house, louder than before. Over the noise, Mia heard multiple voices now, overlapping and frantic. "Don't leave. Stay with us. It's cold here." The words were interspersed with sobs, screams, and guttural whispers. Mia backed away, her heart pounding. "Who's there?" she shouted, but the voices only grew louder. Then, just as quickly as it had started, the noise stopped. The house fell eerily silent, save for the faint patter of rain on the windows. Mia stared at the radio, its power switch still turned off. She reached for it, her fingers trembling, but as soon as she touched the dial, a deep, distorted voice growled, "Don't turn it off." Mia screamed and ran upstairs to her room, slamming the door shut. She barricaded herself inside, clutching her phone in the hope the storm would pass and she could call for help. Hours later, exhaustion overtook her, and she fell into a restless sleep. When she woke up, the storm had passed, and the sun was rising. Relieved, she ventured downstairs cautiously. The radio was gone. In its place was a note scrawled in red ink, reading, "We'll be back when the static calls. The Carnival of Whispers." Every year, the traveling carnival rolled into town, bringing its kaleidoscope of lights, laughter, and mystery. But this year something felt off. Anna and her best friend Nate decided to explore it on opening night. The air buzzed with excitement, but there was a strange tension, as if the carnival held secrets it was unwilling to share. "Let's check out the maze of mirrors," Nate suggested, pointing to an old tent with faded paint. Anna hesitated. There was something unsettling about the tent, but she didn't want to seem like a coward. They bought tickets and stepped inside. The maze was dimly lit, the mirrors warped and dusty. Their distorted reflections stretched and twisted, creating eerie versions of themselves. As they ventured deeper, the sounds of the carnival faded, replaced by an unsettling silence. "Nate, are you sure this is safe?" Anna asked, her voice trembling. But when she turned, Nate was gone. "Nate!" she called out, panic creeping into her voice. The mirrors seemed to close in around her, reflecting endless versions of herself. Some of the reflections didn't match her movements. They blinked when she didn't, or smiled when she frowned. "Anna," a voice whispered. She spun around but saw no one. Her heart pounded as the whispers grew louder, coming from all directions. "Anna, you shouldn't have come here." She ran, desperate to find the exit, but the maze seemed to stretch endlessly. The whispers turned into mocking laughter, and the reflections in the mirrors grew more sinister. One by one, they began stepping out of the glass, their forms shadowy and hollow-eyed. Anna screamed as they surrounded her, their cold, bony hands reaching for her. Just as she was about to give up hope, a hand grabbed her arm and pulled her through a hidden door. It was Nate. "Run," he shouted, dragging her outside. They didn't stop running until they reached the edge of the carnival grounds. Turning back, they saw the tent collapse in on itself, as if it had never existed. "What happened in there?" Anna asked, her voice shaking. Nate didn't answer. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. He simply turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Anna never saw him again.